it exceeded my expectations because I thought in the very beginning I was using it just to collect papers and do the plagiarism check to see, to save me time on Google, plugging in sentences and looking for cheaters. That became a minimal aspect of its use for me later on, not because it was not functioning correctly, but because I started to have fun with all the tools for feedback, and it kind of ramped up my entire feedback process for students and actually changed the way I grade papers for all my classes, because now I focus so much more on rough drafts and feedback there for students who, most of whom look at that feedback and revise and write better papers. And then on the final draft, I use the rubrics that are built in there that I create my own criteria for, and I just grade super fast. I give no other feedback because, as I've learned in these many years of teaching, students tend not to look at feedback on final drafts because they're done with it. So this was a better use of my time, and I could give so much more feedback through the tools on GradeMark than I would if I were handwriting on paper or if I were doing online track changes. And so it's down here on the control panel. You go to Course Tools, and all the way down here to Turnitin assignments. And when you click on that, all of the Turnitin assignments that you have for a course are listed. As you can see, I have a lot of them. And so I have put my fictitious student into one of these assignments here so I can show you. They have a cover letter or personal statement assignment. So here's the rough draft, and it's not really, I just took a prompt of mine and submitted it. But I did have a plagiarized part just to show that briefly. So one thing that's interesting is that all the students' drafts come up. There's a nice list of everybody in the class and the percentage of their originality for the detection, and they've got it color-coded and all that. Well, and you can see the red means that that person really totally lifted something. So that, back to the question about plagiarism detection, it's nice to have that taken care of instantly and see 88% is unheard of. So that person, it turns out, had just taken somebody else's letter. But if we go to my student here and click on their draft, I can show you how the QuickMarks work. So I have my own set over here on the right. I have a library of sets with different comments that I've created. And I should mention that Turnitin also provides some comments that you can use if you don't want to make your own. I just get more into my particular assignment. So let's say I think that the wording here is awkward. So I can just highlight it and then go over and click on awkward wording. And that immediately lets the student know contextually their error, where it is. If I click on the originality, we will see right away that this gets highlighted, this section here. I did that on purpose. It's a quote from a New York Times article, which interestingly did not get listed over here on the match overview as a New York Times article by David Brooks. Instead, it came from two different papers submitted. Oh no, one's a student paper submitted and the other is some blog, which means that this student quoted David Brooks's article in a paper. So it doesn't always, the match is not always exactly the same as where it came from, but it just shows that it's on the internet somewhere and that this person did not use quotes. So I would be able to quickly talk to the student about it and say, look, you didn't put quotes around this. In my online course, certain levels of writing courses that we have, we are given tutors to help us. And so that tutor can have access to the course on Blackboard, obviously, and then I also, on Turnitin, if I make that person an instructor, which I do, they can go in and use the grade mark tools as well, so we can divide up the students, or I can have that person look for just, you know, mechanical errors, and I can look for the larger issues, and so it becomes a real time saver again, and, you know, very easy to share tasks that way. But you could, if you had a course, one course taught by 5 different TAs or something like that, who a professor wants to grade a certain way, the professor can create a set of QuickMarks that matter for that assignment, and could theoretically tell the TAs, just use these. And that would keep people sort of more consistent, I think, in grading, looking for the same criteria. And that's kind of how it works with the peer reviews as well, because you set up questions with the peer review based on what you want students to be paying attention to. So what I have found with peer reviews in that way is that students do more than I ask them to. I ask some questions, and then they add their own comments on the text as well, but they're all kind of grounded in the things that we've talked about in class, or that those questions are addressing. So for consistency of criteria assessment in an assignment, I think it does help streamline that amongst various readers, whether it be fellow students or other graders or readers. If you want to make a quick mark, I can show how easy it is to do. Let's say that I don't want subtitles in this paper, and this student has subtitles, so I don't have a quick mark to say that. So I can just highlight it and click on that highlight, and a blank comment comes up. If I think I'm never going to say it to anybody else, I can just write the comment here. So let's say no subtitles for this assignment. And I could just save it, and that comment would be there for the student. But let's say that this is something I'm seeing in a lot of drafts, and I don't want to have to keep writing this every time. I can click on Save as New Quick Mark, and I just give it a title. Whatever I think is going to make sense to me over in my group of quick marks. So you try to think about it. It files it alphabetically. So I'd probably call this subtitles not required or something like that, because I want it to be filed under subtitle, because that's what I'll think of when I want to make the comment. Save it, and now it says that. It doesn't just have a call out, it says subtitles not required, and then if they hold their mouse over it, it's a pretty repetitive comment on my part because I'm making it up right now, but you know, I could make suggestions how I would like them to do it. I mean, you can say as much as you want. I think you know, the shorter the better, but and then if I decide, oh, you know what, I think subtitles are wonderful and I disagree with that, I can just trash it. It's gone. So, again, it's really easy to use. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from students, and in fact, if one feels like pursuing that aspect, there's a lot of research that Turnitin is more than happy to provide, showing that students really statistically feel appreciative of the feedback that they get, and they don't feel intimidated or any of all these things that people are afraid of. It's not impersonal at all. It's actually more personal because of the individualized attention that they get. Even though, yes, there are a lot of grading comments that I'm, you know, have programmed to make over and over. That's what we essentially did when we hand wrote them, except our handwriting got really sloppy and we got in cranky moods, you know, after we wrote the same thing over and over again. So this way the emotional layer is not there, and that's better. And they just are really grateful to get that feedback. So now I can show you when they fixed it. You can also access a student's portfolio by clicking on the student. And here's all the papers that student has submitted. And let's see if our phony student here has revised that plagiarized material. And we can see right away they did, because it's 0% similar up here. And if we click on originality, we can go back to where that problem was, and it's not highlighted because there are quotes around it. So this just shows it, how the student can take the feedback and make improvements from it. I should also point out that the student can, they would get your grade mark comments here, and they would get the peer mark comments here, which this student, obviously because it's not a real student, did not participate, but they can also see everything on one draft by clicking on these little buttons here, and they can see all of that feedback on their draft all at once, which is really nice for the student. They could also click down here and see if I had left comments here or listen to a voice comment here. The peer review is great because, just as with grading and draft feedback, the peers can give each other feedback online, and there are a number of reasons that is really a great thing. One being the ease of it. It's on their computer or their, even their phone. Unfortunately, I personally wouldn't want to provide feedback on a phone, but accessibility is a big deal for them, and it also causes them to really pay attention to that one draft when they're doing it. It's their mode, it's how they do things. The old school way of going into a classroom and having printouts and trading them around, there's a use for that. I still do that sometimes, less as a peer review than as a workshop kind of thing. Let's all add transitions or something. But in terms of really focusing on a paper and giving quality feedback, quality time even, to that paper, I think the online venue is the best. And again, it's all integrated into Blackboard, it's all in one place. If things go well, the scores show up in Blackboard that they've done the peer review, so I don't have to do anything if I don't want. I can, if I want, I can go in, I could read every single peer review and I could say, this one gets that many points, but there are times when it's good not to spend so much time on the details. So they get that exposure to the drafts without me having to do anything other than set up the assignment. For the final draft, I have a rubric in place. So the student would click on this here, and the rubric comes over on the right. And this is a very simple rubric because this assignment is a low-stakes assignment in my course, and I don't get into a lot of nuances, but I do have some, for larger stakes assignments, I have maybe 6 categories, and I have pluses and minuses, in other words, instead of going from 95 to 86, I go 95, 89, 86, 84, So you can do it however you want. You can also make these qualitative and not have numbers at all. I like the numbers because I like it to, at the end I can click on this apply rubric percentage to grade, and it goes right to the grade book in Blackboard, so I'm just done with the whole process. If I disagree, let's say it calculated a 79, and let's see what it did calculate. Yeah, it calculated a 79, but let's say I thought I wanted the student to get a B anyway. I can just change this number up here to whatever I want. So you're not stuck there. But the way it works then is that, let's say in the writing category, the student holds the mouse over where they got their score, and there's information defining that. And again, you can do it as detailed as you want. On this one, I just have, you can see the word excellent there for the 95, pretty good, this student got adequate, but the description of the criteria stays the same. That shows that it was an adequate job of these various criteria. Some assignments, I actually change the whole text for each square, saying what specifically, was missing from that to make it be whatever score it was. So again, you have total control over how you want to make your rubric. For non-writing teachers, and in a way, I wear two hats. I'm a writing teacher, but I'm a rhetoric and writing. So we have certain things we're looking for that are different than just writing issues, and it has to do with their analysis of a text, let's say. It could be anything. It could be a history paper. It could be an art paper. I mean, whatever it is. You know, they're the what they call QuickMarks, that are the quick little things, but you can design those. So I have a library of assignments, and there are certain things that, you know, for example, this analysis is let's say it's too much summary and not enough analysis. And so I can have a quick mark that says that, because that comes up a lot in these papers. So whatever it is for whatever course it is. And then you can drag that over. You can elaborate, and then you can also leave comments that you type in, or you can leave voice comments. So it's just feedback again. And so it could have nothing to do with the writing. It could have to do entirely with the content and whether or not they're hitting the criteria on the prompt and all that kind of thing. Up here you can see this says paper 23 of 31, which is really referring back to this roster here of all the names of the students. If you want to just keep going, and what I usually do is I click on this little originality. I don't click on the big originality button because I don't want to see the sources unless it looks like a real problem. But this highlights it, any part that's questionable. But I get to keep working in grade mark the whole time. So grade mark is what I have actually clicked on. And then those settings will carry forward to either I can go forward to the next student like this, or I can do a drop-down list and all the students appear here. I can jump around to certain people. So one way or the other, I maintain the settings that I have for originality and grade mark, and I can just keep doing my grading and keep moving along. The plagiarism detection aspect of Turnitin, which is what most people associate Turnitin with, is actually a very minimal, almost for me, I don't even think about that aspect because I use it, I don't even really use it. It's there for me, and so I find it's preventative. Students tend not to attempt plagiarism as much as they used to, maybe, because they know that it's a bust. But it's really, I don't like thinking of Turnitin that way, and I don't like people thinking of it that way, because it kind of is off the point of all the great things you can do with it for feedback and assessment. So yes, you will catch a plagiarism, offender very easily and quickly, and you're done with it. But actually, it becomes a tool more for reminding students how to use quotation marks, because they can't seem to get that through their head a lot, how to paraphrase adequately, because they really do think that if they just take out a couple words, then they've paraphrased it. And so Turnitin will show that highlighted, and you have something to talk about, and you don't really have to work to find it, and a lot of the work is done for you by Turnitin, so that you can kind of move on from there.